superstar, entrepreneur.
So, would you like to tell us who you are?
Hi, my name's Mike Edwards. I race motorbikes. And I enjoy riding BMWs in particular.
So, which is the earliest BMW you can ever remember riding?
The earliest BM would be an R26 or an R27, I'm not quite sure. It was a 250 single my father had a long time ago. And he used... Fantastic timing.
And what was special about it?
Well, the BMs of that era, they had the forks were like I think they were called Earl's forks, non-telescopic, and they had like a linkage system on the front. Curious the way they used to handle, but the interesting thing about them was the level of comfort was unparalleled compared to anything. And in fact, where we used to live at the time in Wigan, there was a road which on the way to Chorley, ironically called Chorley Road, which was an absolute motocross track of a road. And my dad used to drive down there absolutely flat out, which was only about 60 on the BM, with the wheels going berserk and me hanging on, because if you look at a picture of an R26, the passenger seat was like a little dicky seat, like a little extra seat stuck on top of the mudguard with a little grab handle on the front. So I was kind of clinging on like some sort of weird thing hanging on the back. But no, that was my earliest memory of BMs, and I used to really enjoy it.
And what bikes did your dad go on to have that you used to ride pillion
on? Well, he had quite a few BMs over the years. He had an R later on, not long after that, to be fair. He had an R50, which was one of the first ones. I think must have been a stroke 5, because it had telescopic forks, drum brakes. It was a lovely thing, black with a fairing, Avon fairing, I think it had on it. Didn't like the fairing. And then he had an R60 stroke 5, which was 60 stroke 6, which was one of my favourite BMs, I think, of all time. It's a lovely thing, that was. At the time, my brother was getting back into biking after his accident, and he got a 75.5, so that we had BMs right through the family. My dad upgraded then to a 90S, which I absolutely adored, and did plenty of mileage, because by that time, we're going on a few years now, I'd actually got my bike test, and my dad, he let me actually go out on it and enjoy it. It was fantastic.
Didn't your dad have a friend who was into jack bikes?
A guy called John, and he was a mad British bike fan, and he sort of slagged the BMs off, something shocking for whatever reason. And then one particular day, he came to me dad and says, "Any chance of borrowing your bike, Vernon? You know, I'm out of bikes at the minute, I've got an issue or whatever." And my dad says, well, he had the 60 stroke 6 at the time, so he said, take that out and see what you think of that. So anyway, begrudgingly, John got on the bike and drove away. 6 weeks later, he came back, having bought one. He just loved it so much, and I think that's what, for me, certainly the early BMs who get you hooked, but they are, you can call them quirky, call them what you like, but you gain ownership. They're just such a lovely thing to have.
Are they a lifestyle choice?
Oh, definitely. It's you wouldn't say they're all wrong, the early ones, you know, pot stuck out the side, shaft drive. You had to ride them in a certain way. You couldn't just sort of, like if you were going round the corner and you shut the throttle, they kind of sit down because of the early shaft drive systems, and the pot would go on the floor, and just the bikes used to go in a straight line. But once you got used to the idea of how to ride them, you know, power through the corners and so on, they were very effective bikes. I used to really love them. First bike BM I owned was actually an ex-police bike, an 80 stroke 7. And I was doing compulsory basic training at the time, and I adored that. It had done I think 90,000 miles, and it was like a brand new bike. It was just a lovely thing.
So all your CBT pupils were led round by you on that?
Yeah, so obviously with it being an ex-police bike, it looked like an ex-police bike, obviously without the lights and the graphics on, but you clearly could tell its heritage with the panniers and the single seat and the rack at the back, which suited me fine to carry all my gear on the back. So I mean, for what it was absolutely perfect. And I did a lot of miles on that thing.
So which would you think was the first BMW you raced?
Would be a Palmy BMW.
Super mono?
A super mono. It was a Tigcraft chassis with a BMW F650 engine done by Godfrey Michaels, Palmy. And the first time I rode it was at Assen in the Battle of the Twins and Bears race there, because they allowed all sorts of bikes in the race. And I finished second behind Andrew Stroud on the Britain. Well, we had another race as well together, funny enough, at Thruxton. I don't know whether it was the same year. And that was a Bears race, and I came second again behind him there.
So just explain what Bears racing is.
Bears racing is British, European and North American singles, twins and triples. They wanted to outlaw the fours to get rid of the Japanese. They were a little bit twitchy about the Ducatis coming in with the 888s, etc., because they were quite dominant, the 851 and 888s. So they introduced a rule which was quite clever, where you could have two of three things. You could have 4-valve, water cooling or fuel injection, but you couldn't have all three. So the favourite thing to the Ducatis was you pull the injectors off and ran carbs. So they still used to do pretty well, but it gave other bikes, I was racing a Guzzi, 1000 Guzzi at the time, and it gave the Guzzi a bit of a chance. And it was, you could run Rocket 3s and speed triples and that sort of thing. So it was great. It was a great championship. The BMW had been a boxer. Was an opposed twin where the cylinders and the pistons go away from each other, sticking out the side, and it creates a natural balance in the sense that the vibrations are kind of balanced out because of the way the pistons are going. The Guzzi was a V twin, traditional in the sense that it was a 90 degree, I think they were. But they obviously across the frame again, so they kind of used to rub your knees occasionally on the carburetors, or sometimes you were hanging off on the front cylinder, because of where they were, of course. But the one thing about the engines in this configuration, because of the shaft drive and so on, is used to get quite a lot of torque reaction. So when you'd accelerate or when you blip the throttle, the bike would kind of twist sideways. And certainly on the Guzzi, when you launched that off the line, you almost had to point it slightly to the left, because as you gummed it, the bike would naturally want to sort of go slightly to the right because of the torque reaction of it. And the BM was a little bit the same until they brought the paralever out, which kind of neutralised the shaft drive system and made it more effectively like a chain. But that was years later.
So that was the boxer when you did the European Boxer Cup, wasn't it? Didn't Jeffries lend you a bike to ride first before you went to do the VIP race?
Yeah, BMW invited us to do a Boxer Cup race, which was the 1100 BMW Boxer at the time. Or obviously a one-make series, and I got a gig. First of all, they asked us to go to Spa, which was particularly good, but they'd had the meeting before, they'd had a couple of crashes or something, and the VIP bikes were damaged, so I drove to Spa, and unfortunately I didn't race, so they said come to Manicourt, so we went to Manicourt. But in the meantime, Alan Jeffries loaned us a BMW Boxer bike, a road one, to go out on the road.
I think we borrowed Dave's van, didn't we?
We borrowed Dave's big Merc van, and we went down to Pembrey, and I had a black round Pembrey on it, just to sort of get over the idea of things sticking out and grinding, and get used to the whole way the BM rides, or get me back up to speed with it, as it were. Did the Boxer Cup at Manicourt, qualified 5th. I was very pleased. It was such a competitive field. Top GP riders were doing it. It was a very, very competitive field. I think Stefan Mertens won. And I was, again, in the top 5 or 6. We were just sort of nose to tail running around, and it was one of them ones where a tiny mistake and you just drop off the time board sort of thing. So you really had to keep pace. And I think I was in 5th place at the time in the race, and turn 1 at Manicourt is a really, really double apex left-hander, fabulous corner. I went round there and the pot dug in. Unfortunately, I lost sight of where the apex was because I was so close to the guy in front. The pot dug in, lost the front, and you just got to literally wait for the wheel to come back, sort of counter steer, wait till the wheel comes back, let it grip and got it upright. But by then I was heading towards the gravel and did a bit of wobble about in the gravel. Managed to get back on right at the back of the field, got back up to 12th, but I knew it was, I might as well have pulled in for the effort. But fantastic racing, really was.
And the whole event was great because it was like in a BMW village with hospitality.
Yeah, it was a support race to World Superbike, so it was a very high profile event. And the way BMW run their events, because it was obviously conducted by BMW, they had their own village and massive awning and catering, and you were really well looked after. And got a lovely little award, even though I finished a lowly 8th.
I think actually because you crashed, they said don't come Tuesday.
Well, I didn't technically crash. I just ran off the track. But I didn't get invited back for the following race, which was a bit of a shame, but never mind. So I was starting to do my coaching work then, and I needed a bike, and BMW loaned me an R1200S, which we named Bill. Everyone was very curious about it because of, there certainly was no BMs out on the track at that point, certainly no boxers. And ridden spiritedly, you could really put it amongst people and worry people. And it was a great coaching bike, to be fair. Really enjoyed it.
Comfy?
Yeah, heated grips, very smooth, very reliable. And to be fair, the telelever system, which the BMs had, which is different in the sense that how they feel and the way they ride, I always thought it was fantastic, particularly in corner entry, because you didn't get the dive you do with a conventional fork, telescopic fork, and you corner entry and then you pick the throttle at mid-corner and you could carry on steering around the corner as opposed to start to run wide. It was different, and I think that's what people struggle to get their heads round, but very, very effective, and I really enjoyed it. Well, the way the coaching works is, generally speaking, is I spend most of my life following people because I need to see what they're doing. I'm coaching them as opposed to getting them to just follow me around and mimicking what I'm doing. Obviously, periodically I will go in front of them, but I spend most of my life behind people. So I need a bike which is a very capable bike, because you can get potentially a rider who's steady away through the corners and then will light up his superbike, whatever it is, down the straight. So I need to be able to sort of maintain pace, and there'll be certain situations where I have to go faster than them to sort of catch up, say for instance we're in traffic and so on. So the bikes need to be very capable, and the S1000 is exactly that. It's a fantastic, I mean, the bike is out the box apart from the carbon bodywork we've put on, standard exhaust, but it's such a capable bike, and the electronic system and the package which comes with it is just amazing. Alan Jeffries, they've supported us for the last few years now with the coaching bike, with a couple of Gen 3s and the current bike, which is a Gen 4. And they've been very supportive with servicing and everything. They've been really, really good. I'm a real fan of BMWs, but I'm not an authority, and there's lots of BMs I don't know about. But I'm a real enthusiast in the sense that I like listening to people's tales of, I had a bike like that, and I did this, and modifications and so on. So it'd be really interesting for people to send photos and stories of their bikes through, and we can talk about it. It'd be great to get Tony on board. I'm sure he'd be, I mean, he's obviously known the bikes for a million years, so his depth of knowledge will be fantastic. Yeah, it'd be really good to get your photos and your stories and get something set up. I'll try and answer questions about BMWs and your bikes, and of course while we're in lockdown it'll give us something to do.